the 60s, yeah. I was born in 1955. For the first few years of my life, we never had television because I think television came in 1961 or 62, and my father refused to buy one. So we had to sneak to the neighbor's house to to watch. Um, Finally, I think one day after a few years he relented, but he would only rent the TV during school holidays. In those days you can rent the TV. So so when the holiday was over, the guy from the TV shop will come with the van, and me and my siblings will look. There goes the TV. Yeah. So until later when he grew old, then he bought a TV so he can watch TV at home. But what he did was he bought us a lot of books. You know, I remember he bought in those days there was no Google. So anything you want to find out, you have to go look at an encyclopedia. So he bought this whole volume of the Britannica Encyclopedia. Um, and we had a lot of reading materials. Every month he subscribed to a couple of magazines, Life magazine, Reader's Digest. So he wanted us to read rather than to watch. Yeah. My dad was, well, he was a government servant, but he was also into politics. This was the early days during the formation of UMNO and all that. So he was one of the pioneer members. And during that time, I think historically, after the Second World War, the British came back with this thing called the Malayan Union, I think. And there were protests all over the country. And that's when a lot of political parties started coming up. So he was one of the founder members of UMNO. And then later on, when their philosophies clashed, he left UMNO. He followed on Jaafar, to form Parti Negara. And that's where his political career ended. Yeah. But he was a what do you call, he was a very black and white man. Right and wrong is very clear to him. He's honest to a fault, very highly principled. You can set the time when he has his coffee, and everything is very set out. His meal times, his coffee time, his reading time. So he was yeah, that kind of guy. My mom was a housewife. Yeah, my dad was he was he's one of the old-fashioned gentlemen who doesn't take no for an answer. So not an easy man. But I had a lot of admiration for him. Technically, there's six because my dad's first wife passed away during the Japanese War, so he had three kids with them. And then after his first wife passed away, he married my mother, and so there's three kids with us. So there's six altogether. Yeah, yeah. My sisters are. Um, Zainah is Malaysia's #1 feminist. Yeah, she travels all around beating up men. So I'm just joking, but yeah, she founded Sisters in Islam. Until today, I think she's a very vocal activist for women's rights. My other sister is well, she was I think she ended up as chairman of the Securities Commission. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Because my father wasn't. We didn't come from a rich family, because he was a government servant. So we survived on his pension, actually, on his government pension. Yeah, but he managed to send all of us to university. You know, I think we were very lucky in that sense that he really stressed on education. Yeah. Well, if you want to start from the beginning, I wasn't actually trained as an artist. I was trained as a designer.
All right.
Yeah. So
A graphic designer?
a graphic designer, when you finish school and I told my parents I wanted to be an artist. My mother said, "If you become an artist, I will have to support you the rest of your life." So, so if you want to go to art school, it was like a compromise. So instead of doing fine arts, I did design. Yeah, so I did graphic design, and the first UITM actually. I was trained locally. Yeah. So I did 4 years of art school, and when I left, naturally I went into the commercial art line. So I was in advertising for a long time, um, doing storyboards, illustrations, those kind of things. Um, but what I really wanted was to be a painter. So I mean, the money was good. I was doing well. I wasn't working full time. I was freelancing. Um, I think the only time I worked full time was the first year after graduation. I worked on a 9 to 5 job in advertising, and I realized it just doesn't suit me. So I quit, and I from then on I freelance. Yeah. So I service various agencies. And I did that for about 12, 15 years. And I was reaching 40, and I thought, if I don't start painting now, I'll never do it. I'll be stuck in advertising my whole life. So I sort of quit cold turkey. That was 1991 or 92, a long time ago. And I started painting. In the commercial art line, you're always working on a deadline, especially in advertising. You know what it's like. There's always a deadline, and to get a job done, you have a million meetings. Um, or sometimes they will call you and say, "Hey, my client think you have to add a bit of red," that kind of thing. So you're never free. You're selling something, yeah. So after a while, I thought, if this carries on, um, I'll never be what I want to be. So it was just, you just got tired of the whole thing, and plus the fact that I had saved some money. You know, I thought if I try and work at being a painter, I thought I'd give myself 3 years. See whether it works out. Um, yeah, so I just quit cold turkey, started painting. It didn't happen immediately. I had to struggle. No one bought any of the early paintings. you know. And after 3 years, I actually had to go back to advertising and once in a while do little jobs, just to tide things, over. But I think my big break came during. It was a group exhibition actually, in the old Petronas Gallery at Dayabumi. Yeah. I had two paintings, and then I was staying in JB at that time. I wasn't based in KL, but this guy, this writer in the newspaper, J. Anu, he loved the paintings, and he wrote about it. I didn't know him; he didn't know me, but he wrote nice things about the paintings in the papers, and the next day, both works were sold. You know, so it was like a lucky break. You know, and after that, things started rolling. Yeah, you just need that little bit of spark to push things along. Yeah. Anyway, so after that, I had my first solo exhibition in 1997 at Valentine Willy Fine Arts. Yeah. And so my career took off from then. Yeah, yeah. I mean, from as far as I can remember, I've always been scribbling and drawing, you know. I think uh, this natural inclination to draw has always been there, you know. But I think one of the most significant moments, if I remember, was when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. You know, my window to the world was Life magazine. I don't know whether you remember Life magazine, you know?
Of course.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
fantastic pictures magazine, right? I learned a lot from that magazine, you know. The first time I learned about the Holocaust and was in that magazine, you know. And the first time I saw art was in that magazine, you know. I think there were many, you know. I saw my first Bridget Riley in Life magazine. I saw my first Jackson Pollock in Life magazine. But I think the most significant thing I saw in terms of art was there was a spread once on, if I'm not mistaken, it was art from the Renaissance. It was a fresco or some painting that can't, but they were nudes. You know, they were nudes. You know, men and women, and I was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, and I was totally mesmerized by it. You know, I've never seen a nude painting before. I think it triggered in me some kind of, I don't know, maybe a sexual awakening or something like that, you know. But anyway, what I did was I started copying these nudes, you know. I will hide behind there's some big rattan armchairs in our house by the window. So I'll hide from my parents and my sisters and all that, and I'll just copy the nudes over and over and over and over again, you know. Until today, I still do nudes, you know. But this idea of making art that is not to say secretive, but there's something hidden there, that something that is sensual, you know, exciting, you know. These are the things that I think has stayed with me till now, you know. I need to have these ingredients before I can paint, you know. It must be exciting, must be sensual, must be mysterious, you know, something hidden, or you need to uncover things and discover things, you know. So I think that moment when I saw those paintings in Life magazine, I think from that moment what I wanted to do in art was sort of set, basically, you know, the excitement of making art, you know. You know what? Because you know, for most of the time, what you see is the finished product on the gallery wall. You know, that is what most people know as art. But for the artist, it is the times when you made those things. You know, the experience of making it. You know, is what art is all about. You know, because that's when you go through a roller coaster of emotions. You know, it's fantastic when things are working, and it's really horrible when things are not working, you know. There are times when you're a genius in the studio, and the next day you can be nothing works, you know. So that kind of thing is what, to me, what art is about. You know? I've done a lot of things in art, but I don't know. I've never sort of felt proud or something. You know, whether the art is good or whether I'm proud of what I've made, that's not something I can answer. You know, I'd rather you ask someone else. You know, because I don't want to talk about how great my art is. Yeah, because it's a living process. You know, you live it every day. So I don't think I've ever felt like pride or anything like that. You know. I'm more proud of my kids. You know, every time I'm in the delivery room and my wife is giving birth, I thought, wow, fantastic, something real is happening here. You know, so maybe those kind of things I'm proud of. Yeah. Well, I have two boys and two girls. The two girls are still in school. Yeah, so I see one of them might be an artist. Yeah, because she draws all the time. And then my two boys, they're pretty grown up. Both of them studied film. Yeah, so one of them now is well, he works in a big TV company. Um, I think looking after productions and all that, and writing. He likes to write. You know, he writes scripts and screenplays. My other boy also studied film, but during the pandemic, he couldn't shoot. You know, so he decided to. Well, he started baking, he started cooking, and then one day he started to brew tua, you know, which is a rice wine. Yeah, and his tua was pretty good, you know, and he started giving it out for free, and then started bottling them, and you know, I designed a label for him.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, you know, so I thought let's just do this for fun, you know. And since the tua was brewed here in Bukit Tengku, we decided to call it Tengku Tua, you know. and, and then and I you remember the controversy about Timah whiskey and all that shit, you know. So I said, okay, let's make change, you know. Some royal idiot might get offended, you know. Both my sons are great cooks, actually, you know, especially my elder boy, you know, he's a fantastic cook. Yeah. So during the pandemic, somehow all these talents emerged. You know, they were baking and cooking, and he was trying all kinds of recipes. Um, you know, he even did a beef Wellington. You know, which was fantastic. Yeah. I don't go out very much. You know. So the pandemic didn't really have much of an effect on me, and because we stay in quite a large property, so you don't really feel it. But what happened work-wise was that I had to cancel a number of exhibitions. You know, my last exhibition was in 2019, and then the pandemic came in 2020, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, around that. Um, I was supposed to have a exhibition in Manila in 2021, but I had to cancel that, you know. But I discovered a few things when I canceled my exhibition, because normally, you know, as an artist, as a working artist, you're constantly working towards also a deadline, because once you commit to an exhibition, they give you a date, you know, you have to finish the work within a certain period so they can do the catalogs and the hanging and blah, blah, blah. So you're always working towards a deadline, you know. So when I canceled the Manila show, I suddenly felt relief, you know, because I didn't have a deadline anymore. So actually during the pandemic, I didn't work very much, you know. I thought, wow, I think I deserve a break, you know. So during that period, I did a lot of reading, you know. I watched movies, maybe paint once in a while, but since there was no deadline, the exhibition was canceled. I was quite free to do what I want, you know. Um, and then when the pandemic was over, I found I was a bit reluctant to revive the exhibition because I was enjoying myself a bit too much, I think. So until today, you know, I haven't had an exhibition. You know, I haven't. I thought that maybe I'll give myself this year. and maybe think about having an exhibition maybe next year. So yeah, this year I'm just cruising. Yeah, not this gallery because this gallery is run by my wife. When she decided to open this gallery, I told her I will help her. I can advise and help her, you know. But I'm not going to be a part of the business because I don't like business. I don't like the idea of trying to sell things, you know. Um, and I don't like doing accounts and all that shit and thinking about money too much. You know, so the gallery is run totally by her. She has a team of she has a curator and a gallery manager. So between the three of them, they're doing pretty well. You know, so in the beginning, I always, I'll help them hang and how to set up the gallery and all that. But now they're doing things on their own. Yeah, I mean we're lucky because we were living in these two houses, so we stay next door, and we work here. You know, so it for me is a perfect setup. You don't have to go out into traffic and all that. So I have my studio upstairs, but it's messy, so don't go there. um, she has an office upstairs here, and the studio down here where we work, So it's perfect. It's fine. Yeah. Well, when you talk about techniques, basically you're talking about the relationship between the artist and the materials he uses. So each materials has certain characteristics. Working in oil or working in acrylics, totally different, you know. Working on oils where you use turpentines and linseed oil and all kinds of mediums, it's very technical, you know. Working with acrylics where you only use water, um, it's another sort of challenge. Oils, for example, is slow drying, so you have more time to work and blend the colors. Working on oils is like a long love affair. Acrylics, on the other hand, dries very fast, so you have to work fast. You know, you have to know.
Medium.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Was it an emotional process?
Yeah, it always start as an emotional process, because there are certain qualities about oil paintings which acrylic cannot achieve. There are certain things about acrylic painting which oil cannot achieve. Um, so you wanna play around with this thing and see how you can push yourself through the materials. Charcoal, for example, I do a lot of very big charcoal drawings. Yeah, um, it's a material that is, what can I say? It's not a very forgiving material because it's very difficult to erase. You know, but I like the fact that it's just black and white. There is no uh, interference with colors. You don't complicate things too much, and also that you work with your fingers. Whereas in a painting, you have the intermediary of the brush. Between your hand and the canvas, there's the brush. But with charcoal, it is your fingers are directly touching the paper. So there's a certain intimacy about it, especially if you're rendering a human figure or a nude, for example, and you're using your fingers to rub charcoal on the paper. There's a certain intimacy, there's a certain sensuality, which I think when the work is finished, if you're successful, it comes through. People look at it, they feel some heat. You have transferred something. So that's important for me. Also working with paper versus working with canvas, for example. Um, Canvas is most people are not familiar with canvas. It's not something you touch every day. Whereas most people are very familiar with paper because you touch paper every day. Money, newspapers, magazines. Traffic summons. So because of that, paper as a material is very sensitive. It's fragile. You can easily tear it. You can damage it, and because of that, there's a certain care that goes into handling it. So all this translates into the feeling you get in the work. The material itself. This is something which every artist needs to have. Uh, a recognition. Um, for me, it's always about, let's say, if I'm starting on a piece of work, let's say I envision something like this, a man surrounded by tigers, the composition, the lighting, the everything is there to bring out this feeling that I have when I first visualize the image. Sometimes I have a vision of what I want to paint. It might not turn out to be the complete painting, but it is what I would call the trigger point, where something excites you. Yeah, it's not logical. It's not really very intellectual. It's a feeling. You see, for example, this image. I wanted uh, something that is calm, but at the same time is dangerous. You know. But how do you visualize it? How do you set the mood? So that when you look at the image, the whole thing comes together. And you can feel it. So the composition, the technical parts of it, are just tools to get to that. You know. So this image, for example, comes. Um, the tigers was actually from the Singapore Zoo. The white tigers. This man was photographed in the studio. The jungle outside was somewhere in KL. It was in Zoo Negara actually. There's a pond there. So there were three major images put together into one using Photoshop. Yeah, but at the same time, all the elements has to work in terms of lighting, composition, mood. You want to evoke that mystery. Yeah. So it is always that first feeling that I recognize when I first saw the image in my mind that becomes the guide. As I work on the image itself, that initial feeling I cannot lose. It becomes the thread that sort of connects me to the work. Yeah, the thing is, in this line of work, every time you have an exhibition, you are exposing yourself. Actually, you know, you're you're putting yourself out there to be judged. Yeah. Um, so there's always that challenge. And as you get more successful in life, the challenge becomes even more to sustain that success. You so there's always that kind of pressure, which I hate actually. So galleries expect you to perform because to them this is a business. You know. Um, so that part of art is not something which I quite like. So that's why taking time off this couple of years has been great for me. You know, I'm a happier person. So, but we'll see. I mean, in the end, you have to go back into the ring. So we'll see. Next year, maybe I'll start seriously painting and exhibiting again. Um, yeah, you're like a sportsman, you know. If you score goals every time, everyone expects you to score goals, you know. So that becomes a bit of an issue, you know, which you don't really want to get into it, you know, but it's there at the back of your mind somehow, you know. Um, but I must say, you know, now I'm getting on in age. You know, I'm going to be 70 in a couple of years, so I don't care anymore. I mean, if you look at my works, you know, although it, it comes from a Malaysian artist, a Malay, a Muslim, and all that, but I've decided I've decided that I don't want any of those things to be in the work. You know, if you look at the work, there's nothing Malaysian about it, nothing Malay or Muslim or although I am those things, you know. But in the work, the philosophy behind the work is actually to transcend labels. You know, everyone is so concerned about putting themselves in, you know, belonging to a certain community. For example, you know, I'm Malay, you're Chinese or Indian. I don't want to think too much about this kind of thing because I think these are the things that divide us, you know. Um, so in the work, I try to look for a more universal meaning about life, you know. What if you take labels away from a person? You take away his race, his religion, his politics, his what is left, you know? Can he identify himself without these things, you know? So the works are about that actually, you know, because we are so concerned about our ethnicity, about our religion, we draw boundaries around ourselves, you know. I want to take out all these boundaries, you know. I want to play in a bigger field. Yeah, I don't want to be someone who's you know prejudiced and you know. So and these are the things which I teach my children, you know, and I think this is the things that this nation needs right now. Politics has become so ugly, isn't it? Surely when I was in advertising, I was doing pretty well, you know. Leaving it was a bit scary because you don't know whether you're going to make it as an artist or not, you know. But you know, but because you were from advertising, so you you know, I learned a lot of things. You know, discipline, for example, how to present ideas. You know, in how to communicate actually. This is what advertising is all about. You know, it's about communication. How do you communicate to people? You know, how do you present your ideas in the most in the simplest but the best manner? You know, so so those kind of things I learned a lot, and I sort of applied it in my life as an artist. I'm very close with my family, with my wife, my kids. You know, um, um, I have close friends, but not many. You know, I don't socialize a lot. Um, I hate socializing, in fact. My vision has always been a bit uh, um, singular, actually. You know, when you're an artist in the studio, you know, you're having a dialogue with yourself all day long. You know, it's in a way, you know, it's good to go out and see other points of view, you know, but basically, if you're an artist, you know, you're in dialogue with yourself, you know, unless of course you tackle social issues as a subject in your painting, you know. Um, but I keep that separate, you know. I mean, I do social work. I have my time with my family and all that, but in the painting itself, in the works, these are things which I prefer to keep separate from the works I do. Yeah. People always ask me, hey, how come you don't paint your kids and all that? Yeah, I can never paint my kids. I can photograph them. But yeah, somehow I just can't, you know. I don't know. Maybe I can't really have an answer for that. But yeah,
Yeah, it's just
once I don't feel it, I can't paint it. Not really. I think the closest was when I first started painting. I think the first year was the hardest. Um, because when you were from advertising, every time you get a job, there's a job brief, we are selling this soap powder and blah, 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 blah. And, the guy will brief you. And so when you're suddenly on your own, hey, where's the job brief? So, I got all the canvases, the paints, but I didn't know what to do. I mean, you been in advertising for so long, yeah. Anyway, that's how it started. I did many things which wasn't working, and one day I met a very senior artist, Latif Moilin, and we were talking, and I was telling him, I'm starting to paint, but and then he just looked at me and said, "You're thinking too much," he says. You should do, he said. And every piece that you work on, never go back and try to retouch. Put it aside and start a new piece. He says, just keep on going. Don't think too much, because um, the thinking, he said, should be on the canvas. So which is true, because if you think too much, you get tired before you start. You know, some of the initial excitement will go away, or worse, you start self-censoring. You know, um, so I always tell young artists, don't think too much; it's overrated. I say. Do go to the canvas and paint. Even if it's no good, keep it aside. That's your history. That's part of your history. The thing is, you have to progress to the next one, and then put it aside and go on to the next one. That's what he told me, actually, and that's what I did. Yeah, you know, uh, and that's how it worked out in the end. Yeah, young artist, don't think too much. Well, not really. I mean, yes, yes and no too. I mean, I see a lot of artists coming through the gallery, and um, sometimes it's best to sort of trust your instincts. Especially when you're making art. You know, of course the intellect plays a part, but trusting your instinct is I think more important. Yeah, you know. That's one thing I never have regrets. I regard everything that happens, good or bad, as well, as part of your history. If bad things happen, you overcome it. You know, and there's always a solution to something. You know, so I don't really have much regrets actually. Yeah.
great.
As an artist, not every work you do is a masterpiece. You know, and there are times when you're under pressure, you tend to let out works which are not really that great. So, sometimes you encounter them again and say, ooh.
But that's more of a personal thing, right? When
Yeah, that's
nobody
it. Yeah, no one else know. So, but always, there are works which I think are fantastic, a handful, not a lot, a handful, Um, most works are of a certain standard before I let it go out the studio. It has to reach a certain standard. But there are a few, which transcends, because I think in every creative person's life, the act of making, the act of creation, there are times when everything comes out right, you know. I don't know, maybe the stars are aligned in such a way, every little touch of paint is just the right hue, the right stroke, There's not much resistance, in the creating of the painting. But those moments are rare, but it happens, And I think those works are the ones which I treasure the most. Yeah, yeah. One thing I do is that whenever I have an exhibition, I put everything out. All my best works, I don't keep for myself, I put everything out. But not everything sells. So sometimes the works that don't sell are my favorites, So I get to keep them, So and it has happened a few times that way. My only activity out of art is I used to run an NGO. Yeah, this was something that that I wasn't prepared to go into, because a friend of mine, um, he was a pastor actually. He was an ex-addict who became a pastor, and he wanted to set up uh, like a shelter for addicts, Yeah, and he asked me for help, So we set up this little thing called Life Zone in Johor Bahru. Yeah. Started small, I was financing him. He was doing most of the work. Yeah. And then later on, we got support from the Malaysian AIDS Council and those kind of thing, And we started doing work on HIV. So I became quite involved in that for a number of years. I was running the place. Um, then when I moved to KL, I handed it over to someone else. It's still there. It's still functioning, but I'm not active anymore. Yeah. 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 But that part of my life is something which not many people know about. Yeah. I watch a lot of films. I read a lot, and wow, there's so many. Oh yeah, definitely. I was very much influenced by spaghetti westerns. Yeah, I grew up on spaghetti westerns. Um, I'll save my pocket money every day, and then I'll go to the cinema at the end of the week. I'll take my bicycle out, So I was very much influenced by Sergio Leone and his Italian westerns, So the film actually has quite a big influence in terms of composition in the work and all that, of course, I listen to a lot of music. I grew up in the 60s, so it has to be the Beatles, and the Stones too. Yeah. Um, I'm still into bands from that era, Led Zeppelin and yeah, those kind of people, I don't understand Beyonce. Uh, I don't think I can watch Barbie, All that pink will give me a toothache. The first book I read, I remember, was this book called The Dice Man. Have you heard of it?
Oh yes, I read it.
You read it,
Yeah,
huh?
I read
Yeah,
it.
this guy who lived his life by the dice,
Yes.
and then he started killing people and all that. And yeah, that was, I think that was by Luke Reinhardt. It's a fantastic book, I think that was the first book I actually finished. But my favorite writer when I was growing up, I didn't read the classics much, But I like this writer. His name is J.P. Donlevy. I don't know whether you heard of him. He wrote A Fairy Tale of New York, uh, The Beastly Beatitudes of Balthazar B. Yeah, so yeah, but and I also read a lot of detective fictions, Raymond Chandler, that kind of thing, Dashiell Hammett. Um, um, Even now, I like crime fiction. Yeah, but I read all kind of things. Yeah, beauty alone, if there's no depth to it, is boring, isn't it? Yeah, um, danger or on its own also is, but when you put these two things together, there is a chemical reaction. There always has to be debate. Debate doesn't mean anger, you know, doesn't mean fighting and, and killing each other. Debate is an exchange of ideas, Um, so I always believe in that. I, I, I think to understand the creative process, you have to know that there is a need for opposites, you know. For example, if you take sugar and you add more sugar to it, you get nothing but just more sugar. But if you take sugar and you add it with salt, you're gonna get a third flavor. That's how things are created. You cannot cook with one ingredient. You need many ingredients to cook, isn't it? It is the mixture of different things of opposite natures, you know, which results in the creation of something. In art, in music, in writing, it is the same. If there's no friction, there's no creation. So that is why there is always a need for opposites, for good, evil, black, white, up, down, left, right, man, woman. You know, man makes love, you get nothing. Man and woman makes love, you get a child. That's the only reason why people frown upon LGBT. That's the only reason. But nature has arranged it so that when opposites comes together, you get a third. You know, um, you'll find that in any situation. Nothing happens with one ingredient. So that is why there is a need for diversity. A need for dialogue.